It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hi, this is Jerry Kutz, publisher of the Osceola, and today I'm joined by Dr. Joe Camps, a Tallahassee urologist and former captain of Bobby Bowden's first defense at Florida State back in 1976. Joe has been a longtime Seminole Booster member and a former member of the Florida State Board of Trustees. Joe, you've known Coach Bowden for a very long time, first as a player and then as his urologist. Would you share your thoughts about Coach Bowden with us?
You know, when I first was introduced to him, you know, he called everybody buddy. And if he didn't know your name, he'd say, "Hey, who's old number 42?" or something like that. The most vivid thing I can recall was that, you know, he really truly was a man of faith. You know, a lot of people say that, particularly when somebody dies, but I mean, Coach Bowden really, he preached that, and you know, it was evident. I never sensed that he had nothing but genuine respect and love for his players. You know, sometimes, you know, particularly if you are of a different race, sometimes you feel like you're not embraced. But Coach Bowden embraced everybody, and you just felt that about him. He was genuine. It was just not statements, but he walked the walk. And you know, I'll never forget. He called me into his office one day, and I was sitting there and I was looking straight at him. And he said to me, he said, "Son, are you walking the line?" And I was scared to death. I didn't know what he meant. I had no clue. I said, "Well, what do you mean, Coach?" He said, "Son, are you walking the line?" And I had no idea what he meant. And so after a while, he said, "I'm just checking on you. Want to make sure you're doing the right thing." And I was relieved because I wasn't sure if I had done something on the field, off the field, whatever. But he had a way of communicating with you that he could scold you and discipline you without being overbearing. And that's a real art. And he developed that kind of respect. And he was often very quiet, as you know. He would go up into his little tower, and then he'd come down and chat with the coaches, and then they'd have something to say and relate it to Coach Bowden. But, you know, he was, I think the thing about him, you know, was his Christian faith and his walk and the genuineness that he displayed with everybody. He didn't mince words. He didn't make unfulfilled promises. He is clearly one of the greatest people I've ever been associated with. And, you know, when I went to med school and finished, he was one of the first ones to congratulate me. And he said, "You know, Joe," he said, "you're the first doctor I've ever had that play on the football team." And I was kind of surprised by that. And then Scott Warren came right behind me, and he was almost as proud of that as I was. I mean, he wanted you to succeed in a positive way. But I gotta tell you two stories. One, so we're playing the University of Florida, and it was a booster trip. So being a former player, I got to go in the locker room before the game. And so all the coaches and the players were in one room, and in one little coaching dressing room, Coach Bowden was sitting on the table, on a bench. And I went in there and I said, I said, Coach, how you feeling? He said, Joe, I'm scared to death. I said, what?
It's not what you want to hear.
He says, I'm scared to death, Joe. I'm scared they're going to beat us. I'm scared they're going to run the score. They're going to beat us 50-0, you know. He says, I'm scared. He was shaking a little bit. He says, I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death. And then when it comes time to address the teams, he walks out there and he says, now, men, we're going to take it to them today. He says, I want everybody at 100%, and we are going to win this football game today. Y'all hear me? So he went from telling me he was scared to death to being a general, like, you know, General Pat, you know, scolding his team. I thought, what a transition. He was honest with me. And then he walks in and get his men prepared for battle. But that was the kind of sophistication that he had. And if anybody really know him well, they will tell you that he had a unique way of communicating with different people in different ways. But the other sort of part of the story that I can say now because it's public, right? I mean, I don't feel like I would be breaching any confidence, but, you know, when we made the diagnosis of the prostate, he called me after and he said, now, Joe, he says, now, you know, I don't want anybody to know about this. I said, yes, sir. I promise you that. We took him in the hospital in the middle of the night, did his procedure like at midnight, had him out by the next morning. All the staff were gone. We had just very limited people. Dr. Forstoff and I, we would hide him so nobody knew where he was. We didn't have him registered in the system. We had shut it down. And this went on. He said, Joe, now, he says, now, you know, if this gets out, this is about, he's telling me don't tell him that. I said, but if this gets out, then every coach is going to say I'm dying. And I laughed. I said, Coach, we're going to take care of you. So for 5 solid years, nobody knew anything.
Wow.
5 years. 5 years. And then I get this call from California. And there's somebody says that Coach Bowden gave me your number, and they wanted me to share the experience about his treatment. So I hung up the phone. I just hung it up. Called back. Same thing. I said, listen, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, I was trying my best to deflect that. I didn't know that the lady said, well, you know, he gave us your number. I said, I'll tell you what you do. You call Coach Bowden, and you tell Coach Bowden to call me. Hour later, the phone, hey, buddy. How you doing? I'm fine, Coach. How you doing? This is 5 years later. He says, well, some company I've agreed to do with it, we were going to go public. And it had been 5 years, nobody knew, and then he went public. And you might remember back then he was on ABC and the Roberts lady, what was her name? Robin Roberts. You remember her?
Yeah.
ABC. Good Morning America. My picture flopped up on the screen all over the country. Within 12 hours, several hospitals and universities and all kinds of people called me and asked me if I wanted a job. I got 12 job offers off that first little interview in less than 24 hours when he went public with that.
Now, Joe, what year was that?
Sir?
What year was that?
What year was that? Ooh. You know, it was 5 years after we diagnosed his prostate cancer. I can't remember.
Well, we're talking late 80s, right, or early 90s?
Early 90s, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because
Yeah.
when I did the last big interview I did with him this spring, you know, I had gone in there
And as you know, I was wearing a leg bag at that point. And I did the interview, and he told me he had prostate cancer, and that he had, it was in remission, I guess, at that point. But or at least that's what he told me.
Right.
So continue, please.
And so after all those jobs, I was just shocked, and then everything got out, and he did very, very well, and was very healthy. I would see him and speak with him from time to time. Didn't take up much of his time. Recently, when
2021.
It was 2011 when that happened. My wife just pulled it up. Bobby Bowden tells GMA USA Today he had prostate cancer.
Okay.
Read
So
that
article. He had it from 2006 to 11.
Yes.
That you had kept it quiet.
Yes.
Okay. Then.
And then the last time I saw him, I knew he was in the hospital, and I sort of knew what was going on, and we certainly didn't disclose anything. I mean, patient confidentiality.
Right.
But I was able to visit with he and his son Tommy and his wife, and then I just kind of just stayed to myself, but I had a lot of positive reflections, and just to show you just how powerful he was, that he was a testimony of faith, dedication, hard work, and he lived it, he breathed it. And he smiled when I walked into his room about 2 months ago, and I remember reaching over and giving him a hug, and it was really surreal. And then again, I didn't say anything to anybody, including my wife. I take patient confidentiality. That's a bond. It's almost a contract between me and the patient, that I won't break that bond. I don't care who it is. But I gave him a good hug. He smiled. And in the true Bobby Bowden way, I could tell he was a little weak, but he looked up and said, "Hey, buddy, how you feeling today, man?" Typical Bobby Bowden, And he had a way of appreciating others more than himself, and he lived that, and it was genuine. Sometimes people fake that, but you couldn't fake it with him. So the real motto of my whole story was that he treated me very respectfully. He loved me genuinely. He cared about me and my family. And he put me before himself. And I truly believe, and I know for a fact, that if you're biblically oriented, Christ died for everybody, the godly and the ungodly and whoever, you know what I mean? And Bobby Bowden always put others first. And he demonstrated, you're talking about, I knew him since 1973. So that's a long time.
Yeah.
And he was the same when I met him then as he was when I saw him in the hospital about 2 months ago. Didn't change a bit. And that's spectacular. I tell you, it challenges me because sometimes I have my moments, but a life well lived. I'm glad he's at peace and rest. I don't know. I've had so many friends of people, even some of my colleagues that were like University of Miami fans and Florida fans and all, and they said that Tallahassee would never be the same without Bobby Bowden, and it won't be. And there were so many people appreciative of the contributions he made to the FSU family. He truly is. I'm not going to say was. He is FSU, and he is the legacy. And if the world could emulate Bobby Bowden, we would all be in a much better place, beyond a shadow of a doubt. I know that to be true. And I think those would be the words that would leave me. I'd leave you with about how I felt about Coach Bowden. I mean, it's an icon. He was an icon. I mean, he was iconic. Yeah. You hear people say that a lot of times about people, but he is legendary. I mean, he's unbelievable. So that's pretty much it, Jerry, unless you want to ask me a couple.
I got one last question for you.
Yeah.
I understand that Tallahassee is lost an icon. In talking with you and other players, I think one of the things a lot of the players have told me is that he was constantly planting seeds. You know, the influence he had on you and on what your life would become is Coach Bowden's core values living in you.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to express.
And that's so many of our players have gone into professions, whether it's coaching, teaching, law enforcement, medicine, law, and they're carrying some of that light with them. And so while I think the icon is gone, he lives on. And
that's only symbolic. Coach Bowden is alive and well in me today. I mean, he had that kind of influence, much like my father. They were both very similar. And, a lot of people will say nice things about me, but you're seeing me respond because of the positive influence of my parents, my grandfather's Coach Bobby Bowden. I mean, it's who I am. He helped define who I am, at least in my thought pattern and the way I approach things. And I'm instilling those things into my children, so he will have a lasting impact. And there's no question in my mind. And that's why so many players were endeared to him. And, there are a couple books that sit in my favorite place in my home, and one of them is Bobby Bowden. I have that book, and it's just he will live on, and even through his own children and the people that he's come into contact with, all the coaches. I mean, the Jim Gladdens of the world. It's just McDowell, Schofield, that may be a name from the past.
Yes, that is.
Deke Pollard, Rodriguez, Dan Henning. I mean, Coach Bobby Bowden has touched so many lives, and he will live on. I mean, he will definitely live on. People will, as long as this earth is here, somebody will know Bobby Bowden, I guarantee you. He had that kind of influence over the years on so many people in a deep way, based on some of the people that responded to me from other parts of the state And even my own family, my brothers, my sisters, said that, we're praying for you because we knew how close you and Coach Bowden were. So that tells you, for people to want to encourage me, just by the association, tells you that the power that and the knowledge base that this man instilled in people. I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's almost surreal. You know what I mean, Jerry? I mean, it's almost like this is fiction, but it's not. It's the truth, and that's why it's so powerful, because it's just not a mindset thing. You're living the life. You're living the legacy. I mean, you live it. I mean, I just tell you, the man was just an incredible person.
Well, Joe, I appreciate all your time today.
No worries, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!